past all of them as well. What a move for the 48. Oh, look at this, and onto the straight they come.
Brilliant move there from the number 40 to make it through. That left-hander sliding up the inside, going up now over Hawthorne Hill, down Pilgrim's Drop, and it's brilliant stuff here at Brands Hatch.
Well, it's from the Cathedral of Speed to the hills of Georgia. Hello, everybody, and welcome along to round 14 of the World GT Championship Season 17, right here on RaceSpotTV. Pleasure to have you all along here. It's Paul Smith and Ron Mounds here after stepping into the hot seat, Ron, last week. You had some exciting racing to talk about, didn't you?
Oh, that we absolutely did. Monza 1 week ago put on a show in the two races during that technical round. We rung in the second half of this season in style, but to ring in the second and final endurance race of this season, I have a feeling we're in for a good one. Road Atlanta hosts one of my favorite endurance races on the IMSA calendar every single year, and here at the World GT Championship, I think we're going to be in for a good one.
Yeah, we certainly are. Started off at the end of January at the Nürburgring, Bathurst, Silverstone, Interlagos, Sebring and Hockenheimring were the first half of the season. Monza last week before Road Atlanta here today. Watkins Glen is next week, another one of our technical rounds. Then we finish off with Imola, Spa and then the Red Bull Ring to see us off at the start of May. Who can believe we're already halfway through the season? Well, this man can. Dino Lombardi, he's got a 77-point lead over Alex Davidson right now in the championship. Ross McFarlane is in third. However, he will be dropping down the order as he will be no longer participating in the season. Anders Meyer ahead of Lorenzo Castellani with Alex Cohen, James Boumet, Alessio Bonino, Adam State and Jack Sedgwick round out the top 10 of the series in Pro. In Pro-Am, it's Adam Watson who currently leads by 78 points over Jack Osborne, with Will Guthrie not that far behind him, just 18 points off of Jack. Paul Webster and also Joe Newman are joint in fourth place ahead of Richard Simner and Taylor Lane. Nikolai Agard, Jonathan Walker and Dan Blackwell round out your 10 in Pro-Am. In AM, it's a bit of a bigger, more comfortable lead for Aidan Carter in that one. 184 points separates him and Dan McCauley. Then it's Tom Stanley ahead of Ben Altria with Simon Andre Livingston, Giuseppe Wilkins, Ben Gregory, Jack London, Luca Monroe and Adam Hedgecock. In your team standings in the pro teams, it's 163 points that separate WSR Esports Butt Kicker and 07 Racing. WSR Next Level Racing are in third, ahead of Racing Lab Esports Ford in fourth. Altitude Freem Esports are in fifth place ahead of Altitude Esports by SimStickers. Then Atomic Esports seventh ahead of Full Tilt Motorsport. WSR Esports Abrupti and Hyperion Racing round out your top 10, should I say, in Pro. In AM, it is Prasada Nomad that lead that one, but only by 12 points over Series 1 Racing. Altitude Esports by Mr. Hedge are in third, ahead of DCW Racing Blue fourth. Full Tilt Racing, Racing Lab Esports, Full Tilt Competition, Team Heat Together and Ominous Gaming and DCW Racing Yellow round out the 9 teams in AM. Well, qualifying is coming to a close here then, Ron, and, well, it's close at the top. Alex Davidson provisionally on pole position.
Yeah, that's got to be a good performance from Davidson. He's been quick all throughout this season, but at this point in time, it really feels like Dino Lombardi against the world when it comes to that Pro Class Championship fight. Lombardi has been an indomitable force all throughout this season, has a handful of victories up to this point, and looking to keep it going through the final few rounds of this championship. But Alex Davidson in that one car, looking to be P1 in the championship at the end of the season. I think if anyone's going to challenge Lombardi, it's probably going to be Davidson.
Absolutely, it's going to be an intriguing one. There's drivers still setting times right now. The last couple of cars coming across the line in all of this, and we will be able to get our starting grid shortly for you as, well, actually, we'll be able to bring it to you now. Alex Davidson then, pole position for WSR Esports Butt Kicker. Alongside him on the front row of the grid is Dino Lombardi for Grid & Go Esports, the two main championship protagonists in Pro, leading out the front row of the grid. Alessio Bonino and Anders Meyer share the second row of the grid, with Michael Evdoka and Marley Joff rounding out the third row. Row number 4 for Heraldus Utilitas, with Aidan Young alongside him. Fifth row of the grid, David Baker and Alex Cohen, with Lorenzo Castellani and Eric Rousseff rounding out row number 6. It's the 7th row of the grid for former champion Jack Cedric. Alongside him is Adam States. The top of your Pro-Ams, David Mendonca and Kevin Simpson are sharing the front row of Pro-Am, which will also be the 8th row of the grid for that Solpec Precision Racing team. Alessandro Toccio and Richard Simner then share row number 9. The 10th row of the grid for Adam Watson, your Pro-Am Championship leader, and Jonathan Walker is alongside him. Will Guthrie and Paul Webster then share row number 11, with the 13th row of Adam Tompkins and Simon Andre Livingston, who's going to be your top AM driver on the grid, on row number 12. The 13th row for Arthur Thurtle and Lewis Ward. Then behind them, Phil Samways and Jack Osborne on the 14th row of the grid. Row number 15 for Josh Booth and Aidan Carter, your AM Championship leader, alongside him. Row number 16 then for Tim Perry and Jesse Payne Wilkins, with Dan Blackwell and Jack London sharing the next row of the grid. It's Ben Gregory and Taylor Lane on that next one. And then the final few rows of the grid. Row number 19 is Cameron DeBastos and Adam Hedgecock, with Yaman Pruis and Alistair Pollock then on row number 20. Steve Koenig is on 21st of the grid. 21st row of the grid, should I say. Alongside him should be James Boumet, who did not set a qualifying lap, and neither did Ben Altria, who will be all on his own at the very back of the grid in 43rd place. So, track conditions, mostly cloudy, nice and early in the morning, so it's going to be nice and cool for these drivers, isn't it?
It's going to be cool, and these drivers will not have to worry about the same problems that they had at Sebring a couple of weeks ago for the last endurance race of this championship when we were starting in the late evening, running through to the nighttime. Here, kind of got the reverse. The track is going to gradually warm up to these drivers as these drivers gradually warm up to the racetrack. Road Atlanta, it's a staple of iRacing. I think just about everyone has turned a couple of laps around here, even just turning some couple of laps here in some GT3 machinery. It just feels like a very fitting combination. So I have a feeling that these drivers are going to be rather more comfortable than they were at Monza 1 week ago, which is a bit surprising. But Monza, you don't see a lot of like big kind of I mean, you still see sports car racing heading through there, but I don't know, something in my mind, just like GT3s at Monza, there's some sort of like weird disjointment in my brain. You certainly see them around there, but you don't see it too much. Here at Road Atlanta, though, it feels like a bit more of a better combination. It's like, we're going back to a peanut butter and chocolate combination, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as we go through on this full formation lap here for these drivers, this gives them a, well, we've got a great view of some grass, so I think that's maybe a camera view that needs to be reviewed in the future. Get that one in the
top-notch grass here.
So, yeah. Absolutely. So Alex Davidson seems to be in a hurry to be right there with the pace car. Dino Lombardi's hanging back. Now, is that a little bit of a tactic going on here? But because the rules don't allow you to hang back when the green flag drops.
I wonder if it is a little bit of mental trickery that these drivers are trying to run on each other. We're far enough into the season, and a lot of these drivers have been around the block before here in the World GT Championship, that they know how to get into each other's minds. And even in the World Sim Racing, that's going to be super important, especially in a race that's an hour and 45 minutes long. So not entirely sure what Dino Lombardi was cooking up there, but he is now packed up with Davidson and getting this field, getting a chance to savor this calm before the storm before we kick off an hour and 45 minutes of racing action here at Road Atlanta. It's going to be a good one.
It is officially 12 turns around this track. Depends how you number them, but there we go. We'll get into that discussion later on in the show. A lot of the pros all together, a lot of the pro-ams all together. It's been a good batching by the organisers of this series to get the pros, pro-ams and ams all together, as now Alex Davidson is the one who heads the field. He's going to be looking for the green flag, and he decides to go early, and we're going to go green flag racing here at Road Atlanta, round number 14 of the World GT Championship. Through the go towards turn number 1. It's absolutely together between Alex Davidson, Dino Lombardi. Anders Meyer's got the jump over Alessio Bonino. That's a good start for the Norwegian driver. Into the S's for the first time here, Ron. And so far, so good in this race.
Yeah, the driver's looking very green, about as green as the grass around here, heading their way down into turn number 5, which may be a trouble spot in the early stage of this race. Let's see how those drivers fan out coming out of that corner at the front of the field, though. Davidson got to lead them down into the bottom end of the circuit through 6 and 7. This corner, turn number 7, going to be oh so important in this race. It spits your way onto this massively long back straightaway off into that turn 10 chicane. It doesn't matter what kind of cars you put around here, that turn 10 chicane going to be prime overtaking opportunity around here, and let's see if Lombardi's maybe going to try and use that on Davidson.
Now the question is, does Dino Lombardi feel like he's got the pace over Alex Davidson, or does he feel comfortable just to sit behind, get some fuel saving done? The problem is for Lombardi that he's got a big Mustang right behind him in Anders Meyer, and we know how quick that car is in a straight line, and drivers seem to have learned with that Mustang how to get that car around the corners. We've got a full lap. Everybody's still running in this race. Great start from the drivers here.
I gotta say, touching back on the point you raised a couple of moments ago, Paul, about Anders Meyer in that number 20 machine. As much as that Mustang may be quick, Meyer is quick too. He has yet to grab a victory thus far this season, so as much as the V8 motor underneath the hood, or bonnet, whichever term you want to use, is very thirsty in that Mustang, you got a driver who's equally thirsty behind the wheel. He's going to try and grab a win at some point this season. He's been there. He's been oh so close to victory, just has not been able to seal the deal yet. Keyword being yet. I'm going to be keeping an eye on the driver of the number 20 car. I think this may be the match made in heaven. The Mustang at the All-American track, it just feels like a good fit.
It's also Ben Altria. Something's happened to him. I said that everybody had managed to do a whole lap. Oh dear, unfortunately Ben Altria into the wall on the exit of the final turn of this track. Very easily done, it must be said, especially at the start of the race. But you can see the elevation change around here. It is incredible how the cars go up and down this course and seemingly be able to cope with that, not just the change in direction, but also change in altitude.
Oh, this track is absolutely glorious. It was opened all the way back in 1970. It's an old school racetrack, this, and the last major modifications were done back in 1998, which was also the same year as the first ever running of the Petit Le Mans. This track, those track designers knew what they were doing back in the 70s. From then on, it became a staple of American sports car racing. The SCCA National Championship runoffs were held here just about every single year from the track opening all the way up through until the early 90s. This track is fantastic. It's so much fun to drive as well, whether it be from my early days in the world of sim racing, driving on Forza Motorsports 4 up until today, running on iRacing. There's just something about Road Atlanta. It's so rewarding to the drivers when you get it right, but despite having a bunch of grass and gravel on either side of you when you're running around here, it feels forgiving in an odd way. So it's fun.
But it also bites. If you make, as we
That it
saw
does.
Ben Altria, you know, it's not a very long way between you and a concrete wall, and that's going to make a very short day of your race day here. Well, we're already 4 minutes run. We're already on to lap number 4. The times come quick and the laps go by quick. One thing with this being an hour and 45-minute race, Ron, is traffic is going to play a big part in this one, isn't it?
Oh, it's going to play a huge factor in this race. And that's another difference from what we saw a couple of weeks ago at Sebring for the last endurance race of this season. The fact that you're going from a track that at Sebring, it's a rather long ride. Here at Road Atlanta, slightly shorter, so it's going to turn into a hornet's nest. I am sure of that. When we get into that traffic, the drivers at the front of the field are going to be feeling the pressure. The drivers farther towards the back find any sort of way to let the drivers at the front go by. Around here, as much as there's good overtaking opportunities, it's still an old school track. It's narrow at certain points. It is going to be super vital that these drivers at the front get the good luck when it comes to those lap traffic encounters. You catch them down the back straightaway, you're going to be smelling like a rose. You catch them up heading through the S's, you're going to smell more like a bucket of horse manure.
So leaders plunge downhill once again through 11 into 12. And across the line, across the stripe again. We are getting a little bit of pack racing going on here. Looking back to Jack Sedgwick on that bottom screen there. He's racing for 8th and 7th places. Geraldus Utautas and Aidan Young in front of him. Behind him, though, is Alex Cohen, who's made a place on David Baker in the early stages of this race. His top Pro-Am is going to be Alessandro Toccio in 15th place, ahead of David Mendonca and Richard Simner. So Mendonca losing the lead early going in Pro-Am. Your top Am driver is still Simon Andre Livingston, 28th place overall. Tim Perry and Jesse Payne Wilkins are both onto pit road. Now that is very early. That tells me that they're getting repairs done.
Yeah, that is way too early to try and make a realistic run to the end of this race with only one more stop. There was some sort of incident that maybe befell those drivers. Maybe a little bit of Maybe a little bit of car-to-car contact in the early stages of this race. That they probably had a ill-fated trip off the circuit, but regardless of how you slice it, got to take them out of contention in this race early. They're still going to be out there on the racetrack, but not going to be ideal for them at all. And I'm looking through as we follow the battle for first between Davidson and Lombardi. Think with those cars coming down the pits, they were still in pit lane when the leaders blew past. So it will be a bit of a headache for some drivers a little bit farther in the mid-pack, but for the drivers at the north end of the field, they won't have to worry about traffic just yet.
It goes, but it makes it a bad day at the office for Jesse Payne Wilkins in particular, because Jesse is just right in front of Will Guthrie and Jack Osborne going through the S's right now. So he's a lap down ahead of the field further down in your order. I want to make note, James Boumet, by the way, it's not taken him long to gain 10 places from starting towards the rear of the field, 42nd place. He's up now to 32nd in this race, so we'll be keeping an eye on him. Again, another one of our former champions here racing today. There's Jesse Payne Wilkins, and this is what happened. Oh, that was just over the curb, that's fine, but then loses control. Oh. Bang! Huge accident there, but turn 5.
And that incident for Jesse Payne Wilkins really started a matter of about a couple of 100 feet beforehand. Shows you that in that section through the S's off into turn 5, a small little mistake can snowball out of control. Let's take a look at this from Benjamin Gregory's perspective in the 113 car. You can see Jesse Payne Wilkins taking that shallow line, spinning into the corner. Gregory got a piece of that action as well. He got spun, multiple cars getting involved in that collision.
Yeah, so he's reacted to Tim Perry ending up into Jesse Payne Wilkins, and then Ben Gregory reacts to it all. But the problem is the car behind couldn't see what was happening in front, especially through that corner. It's quite a blind corner is that one. And so if the car in front of you, if you're running pretty close together, suddenly hits the brakes, you've no reaction time and you end up in the rear of that one. Racing instant there. For my opinion. Now, Dino Lombardi seems a little bit closer than he has been the last few laps. Is he showing an intent here? No, he's just staying behind for the time being here, Ron, but he's keeping the pressure on all the way through the early stages of this race.
Yeah, if Dino Lombardi knows that he has the speed to get the move done on Davidson, what we could be seeing right now is kind of like the game of a cat playing with a mouse before he eats it. That may be what we're seeing right now with Lombardi and Davidson. Davidson may be getting forced into a situation where he has to cook up those tires a little bit too much. The Porsche and the Acura, two very different race cars at the front of this field. And how exactly is Dino Lombardi applying that pressure? Is he doing it well? Is Davidson really starting to overclock those tires on that number 1 Porsche, or is that Davidson? I mean, he's been around the block before in this series. Is he just thinking, oh, I've got an Acura behind me. Oh, that's a pretty nice looking car. That's a nice paint scheme on Lombardi's race car as well. That Acura also sounds like a little bit of a fly. I would love to be in the head of some of these racers. I think the one I'd want to be in the head of the most right now is Davidson, just because I'd love to see how he's reacting to the pressure from Lombardi.
I don't think he's reacting. I think he's just keeping his focus up. You've got to remember that these drivers at the very front of this field are a higher iRacing driver. They're a more experienced driver. They are more used to being in this position where they are battling for a race lead or top 5 position for sure. So they've got that experience in the bank, and Alex Davidson knows what it takes to win a championship as well. Let's not forget, he's the current reigning and defending World GT champion as well.
Yeah, so these drivers, certainly no shortage of experience for them finding themselves in these pressure cooker situations. Just be a case of same old for them in an odd way, but I'm still really interested to see how all these drivers are going to tackle this race in an hour and 45 minutes. There's so many different things that you can do from your competitors. I wouldn't say there's an infinite amount of options, but there's certainly a high amount of different things that you can do in this race compared to just one of your competitors. Davidson, Lombardi, Meyer, Bonino, all those drivers involved in that front 4 pack. Very fast racers, as they have proved all throughout the season. As we're on split screen right now, take a look at a battle cooking up a little bit farther towards the mid pack with Harold S in the 560 car kind of leading that small little train.
Yeah, we're on board on that bottom screen with Eric Rousseff, who I'll tell you now will not make a move at all on the driver in front, because that's a fellow WSR esports driver and David Baker that's right in front of him. So you won't be seeing any desperation moves or anything like that being made from the man in 12th place of Eric Rousseff. He has gained a place on Lorenzo Castellani in this race in the early going. So we are into the 13th minute of the race. Early stages still going on here in this one. If you are watching here on RaceSpotTV, first of all, welcome along. Pleasure to have you all along with us. The timing tower on the left-hand side of your screen. If the car numbers, so Alex Davidson is in first, he's got a green number 1 next to his name. Dino Lombardi with a green number 78. That colour represents which class that the driver is in. So if you've got a green colour, that is that you're in Pro class. If you've got the orange colour on our timing tower on the left-hand side of your screen, that means that you're in the Pro-Am class, as Torchio leads that one in 15th place at the moment. And then if you've got a red number in that timing tower, so Simon Andre Livingston in 30th, for example, he's got a red car number. That means that they're in the AM class. So just a way of you all being able to differentiate between the different classes in the timing tower. Aidan Young is giving us a view of what's going on for him. And now the question is, the important question is, has he made his bed?
I'm looking through trying to see what I need to do is yeah, I can't really see it too well. The lighting a little bit dark and dingy, kind of reminds me of my room myself. I usually look like it usually looks like in here that I have the same lighting as an abandoned coal mine, but still what I may need to do is I may need to go back to the broadcast yesterday here on RaceSpot of the Radical Americas Championship that I was on, and see Aidan Young's perspective and all that, because he was in that race too. May need to see do a side-by-side comparison of a little bit of investigative journalism, if you would.
I can tell you that Dan Blackwell is the first retiree from this race. He is done, he is out of the server, and he has retired his car. So we've got 42 cars still running in this race as we go along. The leaders, well, they're staying pretty much as they were at the front. Dino Lombardi, I think, has got into a bit of a routine, a bit of a rhythm here in this one, and seems comfortable to just sit behind Alex Davidson, because what he'll be doing there is saving himself a little bit of fuel all the way through this first stint, so that when it gets to his pit stop, he can take less time to fill up his tank compared to Alex Davidson. Anders Meyer and Alicia Bonino are just ever so slightly dropping back off of the lead too, although I can tell you average lap times, I've got a figure here on a different timing screen than what we have on the RaceSpotTV official timing, which is available in the chat. I get a view of the average lap time over 5 laps, and I could tell you that the leaders are actually about 0.03 of a second slower than Anders Meyer and Alicia Bonino over the last 5 laps on average.
That is rather interesting, and wish I could have some sort of software like that. Unfortunately for me, I barely make enough money to afford Greek yogurts. But that is rather an interesting stat about Anders Meyer and Bonino. Just enjoying being up towards the front of the field, but not having the same pressure that the leaders are. They're just running there smooth, getting a little bit of a draft off the front two, and maybe getting some slightly better fuel mileage than them potentially. I know that gap has built up a little bit between Lombardi and Meyer, but they're just in the cruise lane at this point. They're seeing, hey, we got an hour and a half left to go. May as well just keep it smooth.
We've got a change of position in the top 10. Aidan Young and Jack Sedgwick have just got ahead of Heraldo Ciutauta, so you can see that happen in our timing tally. Tautas now down 2 places from where he started. He's lost those positions on this lap, or the previous lap, should I say. So Heraldas just losing those places down to 9th overall. So that close fight that we were seeing earlier on from Aidan Young all the way down to Adam State in 14th. Well, here's how it's all gone. So there's already Aidan Young's gone past, and Jack Sedgwick taking advantage into turn 1.
There you can see those racers side by side, not nudging each other off the track, which, considering it's side by side off through turn number 1 around here, is a little bit of a shock. They were continuing to be side by side off into 2 and 3, but they finally single file out Sedgwick in that number 11 Corvette, getting that move done. Now, Jack Sedgwick has been a driver we've talked about occasionally throughout this season. He's done all right for himself and finds himself in P8 at the moment. I'm sure he's not going to be turning his nose up at that one bit.
He has higher standards, though. I know that. He is a previous champion in this series, is Jack Sedgwick. He finally got the monkey off his back and got a championship win. It took him a number of seasons to get that one done. But then the following season, it seemed to be the same old thing of a defending champion finding it difficult to defend that championship. Still, leaders pretty close at the front. Pro-Am, I can tell you, is pretty close as well for the Pro-Am lead, 15th and 16th places. Alessandro Torchio and David Mendonca, there they are on screen. So there's Torchio in 15th in the white and green 07 Racing car, and also David Mendonca in the Solpec Precision Racing Porsche. Those two pretty close together. That's the fight for Pro-Am lead, and they've got a sizable lead behind them, haven't they?
Yeah, that is a sizable cushion that they have in their back view. And I will say one thing, talking about these Pro-Am drivers, that Pro-Am class has been incredible to follow. And I gotta say, I usually, in a situation like this where you have a bit of a Pro-Am category, I always find those Pro-Am battles to be some of the most intriguing. The Pro battles, obviously, they get a lot of the attention, talking about the top of the top in a certain series. But those Pro-Am battles can usually be the most topsy-turvy, the most interesting, and also the hardest to pin down as well, as we take a look in a moment to see Koan getting a move done off into the chicane.
Nice move. Parked the car on the apex, made sure that Utilitas couldn't get the over-under on him, and gets the move done. And look at how much of a gap that's formed between Sedgwick and Koan. So that's just formed a little bit of a gap with Koan having to make that move. And that's allowed Sedgwick and Aidan Young to just get a bit of breathing space in front of them. Michael Evdoka all on his own in his Porsche in front of these two, fighting away for 7th and 8th places respectively. I do want to also give a quick mention as well to Am, because it is currently Simon Andre Livingston, who's actually lost 3 places in this race, who leads in Am. Now, he's just ahead of Aidan Carter, who is your AM Championship leader, who is in 29th place, so 2nd place in class. We've got a car stopped out there, I can tell you. Car 22 has stopped, and it's conveniently behind the concrete pillar. There we go, Lewis Ward. Well, whenever you see a car in the gravel trap at turns 10A and 10B, Ron, you can kind of put 2 and 2 together, can't you? As we may have lost Ron, unless he's not hit his unmute. And there, contact. Oh, that's the 291. That's Adam Watson, your Pro-Am leader in the championship for Adam Watson. Contact. Oh, that's something that Adam doesn't need at this stage of the championship. So, as we carry on through we go. Alex Davidson is in the lead of this race overall. An hour and 24 minutes remaining in this one. Dino Lombardi has been stalking him for the last, well, almost, well, it will be over 20 minutes now. 21 minutes he's been stalking the overall race leader. Anders Meyer has caught back up though. Ron, hopefully we've got you once again. But Anders Meyer has caught back up to the lead pair. Oh, it's going to be one of those shows today. It's going to be one of those shows with technical issues. Here's the look from Adam Watson's point of view. Now, if I had Adam Watson on that one, I would be saying that, well, I held my line, I left space, the other car didn't leave space on me. I swear, Gov, I didn't do it, the other guy did it. That's what Adam Watson will be saying right now in that car, and Matt Fletcher, the team boss, will be saying, actually, do you know what, yes, it seems to, I seem to agree with that. Looking from the bumper cam of Alicia Bonino, 4th place right now, and we're in a bit of a stalemate at the front of the field, as hopefully, fingers crossed, my colleague Ron Mounds, we can hear you, hopefully, in a second. That is a no, that's a negative. Well, we'll get to Ron eventually in this one. It's not the first time I've ever commentated on a race on my own. So, at the front then, it is pretty close then between those three. About a second and a half covers first through to 4th place in this race. Marley Joff as well, it's worth pointing out, has been slowly gaining on the 4 in the lead. So he's making his way towards them after being able to break away from Avdoka. Joff has been able to just focus on his lap times, get those positions moving forward, and I do believe, coming to us live from Philadelphia, it's Ron Mounds, everybody.
Back. I have returned. I nudged my USB hub on my computer ever so slightly, and then my computer responded by just croaking out at me, so I apologize for that, folks. Back to live action. I had a good bit of color commentary that I was saying that ended up falling on deaf ears because my microphone wasn't going out, and I've forgotten what that color commentary was, so wow, race cars.
Do you know what? Many moons ago, we were commentating on the gathering of Tweakers Racing from Monza, and Will Vincent was producing the broadcaster. Oh, no, he wasn't actually. He was a guest commentator for periods of the race, and put out a video on the RaceSpotTV Facebook page. Yes, we're talking back in 2015, 2016, that just said, race car, race car, race car, race car. That was like, every time a race car went past, it was just race car. Did lead to a t-shirt, so there you go. You've got to get the positives.
There you go. Was there money made from the t-shirt too? That's what matters at the end of the day.
That's not my department.
It's above your pay grade.
Yeah. Right, Adam Hedgecock. What's happened to him? Let's have a look here then, Ron, because I have about as much clue as you. This is turn 5, and boop, into the back, Ben Altria.
Yep, a typical moment heading out of turn number 5. Of all of the sections of this racetrack, I don't know what it is about turn 5. It's a weird weather phenomenon that is always clouding that track. There tends to be a tendency of falling anvils coming down on these drivers heading through that section. I've been struck with plenty of them myself. Turn 5 is one of the clunkiest corners around this racetrack. It's very rewarding if you get it right, but if you get ever so slightly wrong, or if one of your competitors just misjudges it slightly, it can have your race completely go down the garbage disposer.
Lord Hedge will not be happy about that. He'll be saying many 4-letter words behind the wheel when that happened. And the thing is, that is completely on the car behind. You have to react, and didn't appear to react to Adam Hedgecock losing the back end a little bit. As we look at Alex Cohen, he's fallen down the order a little bit here. Although looking to make the move, that's a dive down the inside, and Aiden Young, close between the two of them.
So close, but no cigar there for Alex Cohen. He's going to remain in 9th at the moment. That could have been so close to disaster between those two. It was a nudge and a rub. I'm not really sure what the correct technical terminology would be, considering what they had hang off into turn number 10. It was close for sure. I think these drivers, despite the fact they still have an hour and 18 and a half minutes left to go in this race, they're still going to be breaking the elbows out as if we're coming to the white. It's something about this track that always brings out some of the most aggressive moves out of these drivers, as Cohen and Young having their moment hang on through 10. That's a nice replay.
Yeah, as we get that on the replay then, back to live pictures, and Dino Lombardi, again, sitting there, stalking, waiting for an opportunity. It's going to be waiting a long time for Alex Davidson to make a mistake. And look, you can hear lift, coast, and then brake. He is doing so much fuel saving right now as Dino Lombardi.
I'll tell you what, Dino Lombardi around this racetrack in this GT3 Acura, probably getting better fuel mileage than I usually do on the road in my daily driver. So Lombardi doing all the fuel saving he needs to do behind that #1 Porsche of Davidson. And just talking about the dynamics of these race cars, you can see it on your screen right now. That Porsche is ever so slightly bigger than that Acura. It's punching that hole in the air, and Lombardi's just say thank you very much. The dirty air is not affecting him too badly off through the corners. And when you go onto that back straightaway, he is enjoying those fuel-saving numbers.
But look who's right there as well, though. Anders Meyer, he's getting a double draft from the two cars in front. So he's getting the effect of that slipstream from both Alex Davidson and Dino Lombardi. And behind him, Bonino, again, getting that. And look, mileage off, getting closer and closer and closer to this top 4 quartet. It's going to be 5 for the lead in a few laps time, I imagine, because mileage off is moving forward in that effect simulations car.
I'm really keeping a close eye to see how this battle is going to shake out, whether it's going to turn into a 5-car battle in the not too far off future. As we take a look to see a moment involving Taylor Lane, that's off into turn #1. He got the move done, and then he gets sideways through the corner and loses it. That's gonna be a smoke screen coming at turn #1. Gets a loop back around in the right direction. That is still not going to help out the old visibility factor off through turn #1. Looks like a calm, cool, and clear morning in Los Angeles, California, back in the 1970s.
As we carry on through the S's with the lead battle, this has been a real slow, it's been a slow burner, but it's been a good one. It's been just really just seeing these drivers on the limit, on the ragged edge, at the very front of the field. Speaking of ragged edge, Aiden Young all over the curb, the exit curb of turn #5. That's going to give Alex Cohen the best opportunity, but you can't really take advantage of that through 6. It's the launch out of 6, down through 7, into the backstretch, down through 8, 9, down to the 10A and 10B chicane.
As we continue to see this race develop, I'm starting to think about when we may see those pit stops. We are about a half an hour into this race, and these drivers, they need to start to at least consider it. They've certainly been thinking about it ever since the drop of the green flag, as I just saw some side-by-side racing flare up involving Aiden Young and Alex Cohen. Those two have been itchy and scratchy ever since the drop of the green flag, hoping to have a slight bit less of a Code Brand moment heading off to that turn 10 chicane as they went side by side a few moments ago. As these drivers have been thinking about strategy ever since the drop of the green flag, it may be about high time to start acting on it. Pit stops, I have a feeling, are just around the corner.
Well, the fuel cell is 70% limited. Now, around this track, you can do a fair bit of fuel saving around here, to be fair. So you can do that fuel saving. Oh, now at the front, the very front is getting close. Less than a tenth of a second between them, you can see on the timing tower. I think Lombardi is seeing that maybe now's the chance before the pit stops. If you can get ahead before the pit stops, you can make hay while the sun shines and really get the hammer down, especially if he's been looking after the tyres with that fuel saving that he's been doing as well. Alex Davidson has had to push all the way as we keep an eye on this battle for 8th place.
And you brought up a very good point talking about the tire saving around this place as well. I mean, you can see just with the amount of tight and twisty corners around this racetrack, having some good rubber to the road is going to help you out a whole lot. That may be a big factor in terms of how the end of this race is going to shake out too. Someone has slightly better tires right towards the final 10-15 minutes of this race. Gonna make a huge difference. Still making a big difference now, even though we're an hour and 13 away from that checkered flag.
Now, you mentioned it as well. We're just over half an hour into this race. The race leaders are starting to catch up to some lap traffic. Steve Koenig is the first of those cars. Josh Boot as well. Adam Hedgecock is there with them as well. So the leaders catching up to traffic. They want to catch up to that traffic at the right spot. There you see those 3 cars going through screen, whereas at the front here, Malijoff is now on the back of the train. It's a 5-car train for the lead.
5-car train is chugging along, heading down that back straightaway off into the turn 10 chicane. Got a little bit of traffic to deal with as well. That may be the choke point for these racers. It's like shaking up a bottle of champagne. Eventually, there's going to be enough pressure for that cork to pop. When we have lap traffic involved in a 5-car battle right at the north end of the field, someone's going to get the short end of the stick in all of this, and I wonder who it's going to be. Not catching up to the traffic in a good section of the track as well. Not to catching up to them on the back straightaway like I said was going to be a good spot. Instead, they're catching them off through the section that I said was going to be the worst, off through the S's right now, punching a hole in the air, which is good down the straightaways, not through the corners. This is going to be a real pressure spot for these drivers.
And it always could be a case as well that the leader wakes up the back markers to the fact that there's the leaders coming through. Steve Koenig gets out the way of the front 3. He's also getting out the way of Benino. Oh, he actually gets forced wide by Benino. Mali Joff is right there with them as well. So Joff trying to make a move for 4th place. The front 3 still together. Wow. Now, you're absolutely right. This is where you want to be catching lap traffic. You don't want it through the S's. And look at that. Adam Hedgecock moves to the side of the track, allows the leaders through. And you might be sitting there wondering, but Paul, this is iRacing. You don't have to move out of the way. It's just advisory. In this series, there is additional regulations. You have to facilitate those leading drivers coming through.
And honestly, I think that's a good thing. I don't really, it's always kind of rubbed me the wrong way, thinking about how iRacing doesn't mandate blue flags in official races. I don't know, that's just never sat well with me, if I'm being completely honest. But hey, the last time I said something bad about iRacing, I made a joke about the weather system. My iRacing ended up crashing on me for the next 3 days. So I'm going to keep my mouth shut for the sake that I want my iRacing to keep running smooth on me.
Yes. So, don't tempt the iRacing gods is what I would say in all of this. We are about to reach 35 minutes of race action. Jack Sedgwick moving up into 6th place now, ahead of Michael Evdoka. So Evdoka slowly falling down the field, down 2 places. There's a Porsche there without a front bumper, and it's battling with a Mustang right in front of your race leaders. The leaders will be saying, get out the way, move over. It's Alistair Pollock in that Porsche. Does he even know that he's got that damage? I would imagine he would know.
Yeah, I can imagine. So he's probably looking at his dash and thinking, man, the water temperatures are fantastic right now. He's heading his way down into turn number 1 at the moment. And yet again, the drivers at the north end of the field catching up to the traffic in just about the worst section imaginable. The best way I could describe this is like going down a narrow country road and you've got a trash truck right in front of you blocking the way. You can't even see what's coming the other way, so you can't put on an overtake without being a little bit terrified. It's a choke point in this race. There's no question or shadow of a doubt about that. As you can see, Pollock mega sideways coming out turn 5.
And now Davidson goes through on Pollock, as does the rest of the leaders. And Davidson Again, I would imagine there'll be several four-letter words being uttered by him, catching the lap traffic once again through the S's. Now, is this a point where you think tactically and think, well, actually, I'm going to pit now, try and get myself a bit of clean air out there on track, and get some really hot lap times in after a pit stop before then seeing what the others do? Or is it just a case of staying out as long as you possibly can with that fuel load? The leaders all staying out for the time being as we reach another lap in the books. Lap 29 for the leaders have just started.
And rapidly approaching on just one more lap, not one more lap, holy cow, one more hour left to go in this race. It'd have to be a very big racetrack for one singular lap to take an hour and 8 minutes, as we see some drivers a little bit farther towards the mid-pack making that call to pit. Adam Hedgecock, who we saw involved in that bit of drama coming out of turn number 5, back down pit lane yet again. I think he just blinking in out of existence there as Jack Sedgwick also in the pits. Taylor Lane in pit lane as well. There's Sedgwick up on the jacks in the number 11 Corvette. He's been running pretty all right in this race up to this point. I want to give a shout out to the driver who's been very fast in the AM category thus far this season, that being Aiden Carter. We talked about him not terribly long ago. I'm not sure how things have changed ever since then, but he wasn't leading in the AM category, which, considering he's on a 6-race win streak at the moment, is seeing him out of the race lead is rarer than a Stradivarius.
Well, he's actually on pit road, so he's decided that now's the time to pit, along with Jack Sedgwick, Jack London, Cameron De Bastos, Yaman Pruis, Ben Altria. They're all on pit road right now, getting their service done. And they're going to be coming out of pit road behind the leaders, so the leaders can focus up moving forward. But it's the 606 of Josh Boot in front. Now, I will give credit to that Atomic Esports car, that Mustang. It's keeping a good pace. It's not being caught by your race leaders.
As we see a moment for Arthur Thurtle in the number 70 car, yet again coming out of turn number 5. Can't see it through the trees, but you can tell based off the fact that that's what the car looked like after all that. It was a shot into the inside wall. As much as I absolutely love this track, turn 5, I feel like, can be an iRacer's nightmare at certain points in time.
I did it was Josh Boot, after me singing his praises for long enough, goes way off track there. A few years ago, when I commentated on the first 5 hours of the iRacing Petit Le Mans, Michael Avdokas just on pit road right now, he's got his service done. In that first 5 hours, we had everything happen. Oh, Lombardi looking to the race lead. He's decided now's the time to strike. Not the move being made yet. Now Anders Meyer onto pit road. He's decided now's my chance to come onto pit road, get a service done. But Lombardi is trying to take the lead right now.
Yeah, I think Dino Lombardi is tired of waiting. He spent so long tailing Alexander Davidson in that number 1 machine. He's probably going to have nightmares about the back of that Porsche in front, but he's deciding that now is the time to pounce. And I think part of the reason why this is the case is because these drivers are eyeing up that run through pit lane. Anders Meyer up on the jacks at the moment in the number 20 Mustang. How is this going to affect the other drivers we saw involved in that battle? Aiden Young stopped in his pit stall as well. This is a flood of drivers down the pits.
Geraldas missed his pit stall, had to reverse to get service, so that's a bit of a nightmare. Right, Anders Meyer is coming out of pit road now. His pit stop was 24.2 seconds in the box. Remember that, folks at home. Remember that time, 24.2 seconds, because your race leaders, they're coming through to finish their lap, as Dino Lombardi again looking to Davidson. Davidson's going on the defensive here. He doesn't want to relinquish this lead at the end of this first stint, and they're all coming onto pit road. It's a pit party for your 4 leaders.
And let's see how it's all going to shake out between Davidson and Lombardi. We've been talking about Dino Lombardi having those better fuel numbers, tailing that #1 Porsche of Davidson. How's it going to shake out once you put the rubber to the road and bring these cars down into pit lane? Davidson and Lombardi going to be stopped in their pit stall right about now. There we go. Looks like none of them overshoot their pit stall. All of them up on the jacks. I have a feeling Lombardi's going to jump, but hey, I've seen stranger things.
Well, don't forget that you can take a shorter pit stop now and take the longer pit stop later on, or you can sort of min-max them, you can even them out. Down off the jacks come all the cars. Here comes Anders Meyer. Now, he's had that clean air. Is that going to be enough to take him to the lead? Dino Lombardi's got the jump over Alex Davidson, but it's Anders Meyer to the effective race lead. This is currently for second place. Eric Recef as a pit stop, but Anders Meyer in that Mustang takes the effective race lead.
Shows you how important the clean air can be in a race like this. As much as we've been talking about the better fuel numbers for the draft, keep in mind, we still got lots of corners around here, so that clean air can make a huge difference. And clearly for Anders Meyer in that number 20 car, it worked out perfectly for that racer. Now finds himself in a race lead with a 1.2 second gap to himself and Dino Lombardi. Obviously, Lombardi on some slightly cooler tires heading all through the opening half of that lap. Could be part of the reason why that gap is what it is, but Meyer, he timed that to absolute perfection, coming in at the time that none of the others were. He's going to come out of it smelling like a rose.
Well, as Arthur Thurtle back out there after getting repairs done to his car. Don't say it's once again turn number 5. It is! Oh, it is Arthur! No! Around he goes in the Altitude Esports by SimSticker's car. It goes from bad to worse. He's onto pit road, and in fact, he is disconnected from the server. He's done. Anders Meyer, then as Eric Recef comes onto pit road, he leads. Now remember, 24.2 seconds I said his pit stop. Dino Lombardi, 25.6. Alex Davidson, 26.4. He was 0.8 of a second longer than Lombardi at the stall.
Heading into this race, we knew the pit stops were going to be important, considering there's 2 rounds to stop compared to the usual 1 that we see in this series. So obviously, already gonna have a little bit of an added gain. But considering the strategy content that these drivers can use in these endurance races, it opens up Pandora's box in terms of various different strategies that you can do. And I don't know about you, Paul, but I always love a race where there's that strategy content kind of sink your teeth into and really start to crunch the numbers. I mean, granted, I was never good in math class, so the numbers coming from me are usually a little bit inaccurate, but nevertheless, I always like having that extra bit of spiciness. Not only the action out there on the racetrack, but also the added action of cars coming down pit lane twice.
One driver to watch in the second round of pit stops will be Marley Joff. He took a full tank, so 30 seconds he was stopped. So watch out for him in the second round of pit stops, because remember, he closed up to the back of this fight, did Marley, in his Chevy, as Taylor Lane will look on board with him. And you can tell he's in a shed because he's got the wood up there for the ceiling of that one, but you can really see the force he's having to put through his steering wheel. Really got a strong setting on his force feedback. Now things have sort of calmed down for the leaders in terms of getting tyres up to temperature for Lombardi, Davidson and Bonino. They've started gaining on Anders Meyer here at this point, as Meyer now is mired in the traffic. As we continue to see this race develop, it is going to be a fun one all the way to the line. A couple of seconds away from completing the first 45 minutes. We've had a lot of drama in this race already, and we haven't even hit the halfway mark, so we are in for a good one here today. Lots of different things to keep in mind. How's it going to work out for Anders Meyer with this different strategy? Will we see another swap-a-roo between Dino Lombardi and Davidson? And how are those other classes going to shake out as well? We got that Pro and Am category
category. And as much as the AM class is definitely dominated at the present moment by Ian Carter, that Pro-Am category, as we're kind of talking about before the start of the show, has been rather up and down. David Mendoca finds himself in the lead at the moment in the Pro-Am class, running in 14th, and has a couple of cars between himself and the next Pro-Am racer. So still a lot left to be decided.
By the way, I like Alistair Pollock's hat, the Tag Heuer hat. Now, I'm not saying that as a biased person because he commentates on the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup, but still, it's a nice hat. You mentioned about the Pro-Ams there with the leaders. AM is still Simon Andre Livingston in that Ford Mustang, leading in 24th, ahead of Aidan Carter, who's in 26th place in AM. So those two positions are not changing. Eric Rousseff had a really good run through the pit stop cycle, it must be said, because he was in top 9, top 8, and now finds himself ahead of Jack Sedgwick in 6th place. He's had a really good run through this final portion of the first stint.
Yeah, it's looking very good for him at the present moment. We haven't really talked about Rousseff in the 142 car, running in 6th currently and leading this small little train. Gonna be good to keep an eye on some racers that we haven't really discussed ever since the drop of the green flag. One thing to raise about all these is how quickly you can have movers and shakers develop, especially in these endurance rounds.
Well, remember, started in 42nd place after not setting a lap time was James Boumé. He started 42nd. He's up to 16th right now as James. There he is on screen. He has been on a charge through the field. The former pro champion, the Altitude 3M Esports team. He is racing for. He is in that 16th place right now, and he is charging down on Lorenzo Castellani, who is overall 5th place in Pro. Boumé, 7th place in Pro. So it's a bit of a Pro Championship battle here.
And I'm going to bring in a little bit of American win wisdom into this. James Boumé thus far has cut his way through the field like a hot knife through butter. It's been impressive. For that number 28 McLaren. May try and get another move done on Castellani off into the turn 10 chicane. Not close enough, but Boumé really proven that despite the fact you may not have the best starting spot in these endurance rounds, you have the time, and around a racetrack like this, you have the availability to lick the stamp, send it, pick off some drivers as they go off around you, and then get some brilliant moves done like he may try and do off into turn number 1. Boumé getting the move done on Castellani.
He's got some confidence, hasn't he? That is absolutely sensational from James Boumé. What a drive through the field. Okay, he's had a few drivers retire to help him in that matter. Speaking of the retirements, Arthur Thurtle is the most recent one. Jonathan Walker we lost. So to Adam Tompkins, Lewis Ward, Jesse Payne Wilkins and Dan Blackwell, who only completed 5 laps, did Dan. They are all out of this race. 37 cars still completing and competing out there on track. And Paul Webster has had a moment at the last corner. Oh, was that Josh Boot? Oh my goodness, Paul! Oh, I thought he'd kept out the wall, then he just didn't manage to do so.
Now whacking the outside wall, heading down that start-finish straight away. He's nearly and tries to get turned around, nosing it into the barrier as well. I was just going to note that pit lane that you can see back there, still used by racers every now and then. I think the Michelin Pilot Series uses that for the Petit Le Mans weekend. That used to be the original pit lane. Webster going off the track yet again. I think he locked it up and promptly hit the barrier. And I'm not sure if Paul Webster is in the race. Yeah, he decided to call it a day after that. I can't blame him.
I think the suspension was done, to be fair, as well, after that whack against the wall. That might have explained why it was so hard in then him trying to spin it round and going into the wall. The leaders are slowly closing up to Anders Meyer. So, Meyer, I was going to ask you, in all of this run, does Meyer run to a fuel number and just manage the race from the front? Or was he going to try and get a breakaway, get a charge away at the front of the field? It's kind of mute at that point now because Lombardi is closing up to it.
I mean, he could still try and do that strategy, but yeah, the dichotomy of him trying to think about that is probably going to change completely now that he finds himself under a bit more pressure than he did a matter of a handful of laps ago. Anders Meyer, though, I think that would be a strategy call that could benefit him, having that point of the race where you're not just going 10-10s all the time. You can take it a little bit easy, kind of have a bit of a rest before you get into the closing stages of this race. Then he could just go hammer and tong and continue to push it all the time. I think a strategy call like that for Meyer could really work to his benefit, as long as he can stay in the race lead and managing the race. That's a very good way of putting it, managing the race. You don't need to just attack it all the time, but get to the point where you can kick your feet up a little bit but still be on guard just in case something arises.
We've got plenty of support for plenty of teams and drivers in the YouTube chat. Hello to everybody watching along wherever you are, as that's not Anders Meyer, that is the number 22 then of Taylor, 32 sorry, of Taylor Lane, 29th place ahead of Ben Altria, the Prestada Nomad driver, and LPD in the chat. Big fan of Prestada Nomad. We've also got people supporting Dino Lombardi, the Full Tilt drivers as well from Welsh Boy. Number of drivers supporting, number of people supporting different teams and drivers. So great to have you all along here, folks. It's Paul Smith and Ron Mounds on commentary here for RaceSpotTV. It's round number 14 of the 17th season of the World GT Championship, and it is our final. It's the final endurance round of the season here, and what a venue it is! Road Atlanta in Braselton, Georgia, and it's nice and cool for the drivers. Which, and it's also not that bad humidity either, which is rather unusual for Georgia, isn't it?
I feel like Georgia is such an enigma of a state, because it's like, oh yeah, it's down south and they got some beaches, and then you realize that a lot of it, much like Road Atlanta in Braselton, Georgia, it's quite hilly. You know, it's like Georgia and South Carolina kind of have that same sort of thing to me. I mean, they're next to each other, kind of stands within reason. They're just such enigmas of states. I mean, I say this as someone from Pennsylvania, where you've got the mountains farther out west in the state. You've got where I'm from in the city of Philadelphia, which is home of a bunch of loudmouth drunks, if I'm being completely honest. And then you go like a little bit farther west, like 90 miles away, you find yourself in cattle country in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So you got a lot of different stuff in many of the states on the East Coast. Always love being on the East Coast. I'm not sure if I could ever live on the West Coast, if I'm being completely honest. Maybe too hot for me out there. Once the temperature goes above about 65, that's usually where I start to boil. But Georgia, an absolutely beautiful state, and got some good racetracks there as well. One that I would love to see iRacing add is Atlanta Motorsports Park. If you have not seen that track in Dawsonville, Georgia, that is an absolutely beautiful motorsports facility, and they have one of the most extreme kart tracks in the world as far as I'm concerned there. An absolutely great venue. Georgia, people don't usually think about it too much, but that is a bit of a racing mecca, if we're being honest. It's down south, home to a lot of NASCAR stuff. They still got some brilliant road circuits too.
We've got the race for 29th in front of the race for the overall race lead. So yeah, it's certainly interesting to see how this one's playing out. And the thing is, Lombardi's trying to get in the eyes of Anders Meyer. Meyer's trying to get past that fight. Finally, they sort themselves out there, past one of them, but they've got to get past Taylor Lane yet. So yeah, it's going to be intriguing to see how they work together and try and get through this lap traffic. And that's one of the difficult parts of being one of those lap cars, is you're involved in your own race. You're involved in your own race right there, and you're having to move over to allow them by. You want to lose as little time compared to your competitor that you're racing against, don't you?
It's a little bit of a double-edged sword. in an odd way when it comes to that. You have a balancing act that you have to try and follow in an event like this. You need to take it a little bit easy. Sometimes you need to push it a little bit. Anders Meyer forcing that issue down into the turn 10 chicane. Dino Lombardi following him. That's going to allow that gap to build a little bit between Lombardi and Davidson, who's stuck behind that Porsche yet again, having to dispatch of them through turn number 12 right now. But when it comes to that lap traffic, you have to weigh up the risk versus reward factor of it all. Sometimes you find yourself going for a move that you really should have done a little bit earlier, and then other times you go for a move that you just should not have done at all. As someone who used to do race control for a rather big road racing series here on the iRacing platform, I can assure you I've seen plenty of drivers get caught up in the red mist a little bit when it comes to those lap traffic dilemmas. It can make or break a race like this, and it's such a tough balancing act to try and nail down.
Hello to Tide Panda from the Principality of Liechtenstein. So good to have you along from the tiny principality there. I'll be honest with you, I don't know much about Liechtenstein. But yeah, it's there in Europe, and good to have you along for this broadcast as we carry on with this race lead. Meyer versus Lombardi. The grid and go car, the yellow and black car, as we all the way through the Sebring 12-hour coverage, it was always oh, the grid and go car is green. No, it's not. It's official. It is yellow and black. I don't know how people could say that that car is green.
Well, I'll be completely honest. The only way that car doesn't look yellow to me is if I take my glasses off, by which case it just looks like a blob of pixels. So that is very much so a yellow car. That's a wonderful statement of wisdom from me.
Brad Dalton, right there. He's the one who kept on pushing that.
I will not
throwing him under the bus there.
I will not throw Brad to the weeds, because I've worked with him quite a lot. Worked with him on my time on the Bathurst 12-hour show about a month ago. He's a very great guy.
Yeah.
Hopefully his computer monitor is holding up well, though.
Yeah, need to change the settings on his screen there. Now, these two at the front, they're still together. They're still not. Lombardi's doing the same tactic that what he did to Alex Davidson. And look, once again, Alex Davidson gets stuck behind the lap traffic coming through the chicane. He loses just that little tenth or two over the race leaders. This is costing Davidson not being right on the tail of a Lombardi.
Yeah, this is costing him on a bit of time. He hasn't broken past that cushion where he can just go right back to the back of Lombardi. This second stint, completely different than how it was in the first stint for Alexander Davidson. That first stint, he was comfortably in the race lead. Given that draft, though, to Dino Lombardi, that's part of the reason why now Dino Lombardi is running in P2, chasing down Anders Meyer, and Davidson is running in third, not really able to break any closer, as continuing to see this race develop and seeing Davidson still struggle. I don't know why. I have a feeling that Alessio Benino may try and get a move done on Davidson in the not too far off future.
Yeah, as I just get the feeling that that Lombardi, he's going to make a move at some point, and doing that. I can't believe that I've just been asked by our producer if both me and you are from the UK. Apart from the fact that I'd stated that you're in Philadelphia a little bit earlier on, Ron. Yeah. Never mind.
Yeehaw, guys. Let's have a nice barbecue here for this race of the championship. I could talk like this for way too long, but I feel like if I do, our audience will run away.
The thing is, if I did that, it would turn into Blazing Saddles and would get switched off air very quickly. The race lead you see
and
on the
we're
top
off the air.
Is still going on. Those two are together. It's that fight then with the 95 of Alex Cohen and Michael Evdoka. Evdoka has been falling down the order, it must be said. He's down 4 places from where he started, down to 9th place now. He's got about 2.5 seconds between him and Aiden Young. So Young is going to look to close up to him. And you look at Aiden Young now, he's got lap traffic between himself and Adam State, who's in 11th place.
I just thought of something that I could have said in reference to that discussion of me potentially being from the UK, and I thought better of it, so I will keep my mouth shut in that regard. I would quite like for us to stay in good standing, Paul, so I will refrain from making the joke that I was going to make. Oh boy, I may have to share that after this broadcast is said and done now. But Aiden Young, who are falling right now in 10th, he's had up and down race up to this point. And Aiden Young, the driver of the 427 car, he can always bring the thunder in these events. I don't know what it is. He's like a camera magnet in a way, whether it be the Radical Americas broadcast I was doing here on RaceSpotTV last night, where he was at the center of attention throughout a decent chunk of it, or this race here today. Young is quick. He is a very exciting driver to follow as well. The action just always seems to be centered around him.
Speaking of action, it's been action-packed for James Boumé, who is now up into 13th place. That's a gain of 29 places for the former champion from the Altitude 3M esports team. We'll get that graphic changed at some point in the future. Now, James Boumé is trying to charge down David Baker. He's got about 5 seconds between himself and David in 12th place, and he's got lap traffic there in front of him that he's going to try and clear before he can try charging down David Baker. So yes, definitely it is going to be intriguing to see if James can make much more progress up the field. The problem, of course, Ron, is that we haven't got a reverse grid race, have we? So you can't have that mix up of the grid, and if you've had a bad first race, to be able to then go into the second race in potentially a more of a mixed up state towards the front. Here, this is about the purest form of racing that we have in the World as far as the World GT Championship goes, which is just an hour and 45-minute race.
Yeah, these endurance races just about like a complete swap-a-roo than what we usually have for rounds of the World GT Championship. These drivers have to go into it with a completely different mindset as well. For these racers, I wonder what their sort of what their thought process is coming into a race like this. Obviously, you can take it a little bit easier. You don't want to overexert yourself earlier on. The saying it's a marathon, not a sprint, can really ring true in these endurance races. But I would love to have a chat with some of these drivers and kind of ask them what their preparation is for an event like this. Is it just knowing how to hunker down and settle into a groove, or is it just managing some stuff that you usually wouldn't have to manage in those technical rounds?
Now, earlier on, Ron, you were saying about how it'd have to be a really long circuit to get a lap time that was about an hour. May I introduce you to a race that was called the Marathon de la Route, which for the final 6 years of its existence ran exclusively at the Nürburgring. And there were some really intriguing rules. It was an 82-hour race. And
wow.
You had a maximum lap time that you could work to, and that included your pit stop as well. So if you had to have repairs done, you had to do them quickly and finish your lap, or within the time scale, or else you were disqualified. It was a really intriguing, and I thoroughly recommend, if anybody's online and wondering what on earth that's about, have a look at Marathon de la Route. It used to be a race from one place to another, so it used to be a road race before it then. It was Liège-Rome to Liège, then it changed to Liège-Sofia to Liège on public roads, and then it finished up at the Nürburgring, where it had its longest rendition of 82 hours.
Wow, that is pretty fascinating. I'm a guy who is very big on racing history, really. I mean, I don't talk about this too much in terms of the broadcast I do, but I kind of got into this broadcasting stuff through me making videos about like racing history and everything like that. I usually kind of focus on the IndyCar side of things, and I remember doing this research many moons ago about the longest ever IndyCar race, which strangely enough was not on a circuit. It was an IndyCar event held as a 480-mile long road rally race from, I believe, Phoenix to Los Angeles. The race was held, I believe, on November 6th of 1909, if my memory serves me correctly, and it was 19 hours long, which compared to that event that you just shared is basically like the blink of an eye. 80 hours, I mean, holy cow, I feel like 80 hours of anything is enough to drive someone insane. So that's credit where credit's due to the drivers who did well on that event. That is a good bit of history. I like that, Paul. We may need to bring this up in some more of these broadcasts.
We were just seeing, working through traffic there, Eric Rousseff and Jack Sedgwick, and they were going left and right, trying to work through that traffic then down the back straight. And I think Sedgwick just got caught up a little bit more than the driver in front of Eric Rousseff, so Eric has pulled out a little bit of a gap. We're keeping an eye on the race lead. It's still pretty close at the front, but no change as of yet. They have come up behind lap traffic of Alistair Pollock, who's moving his way out the way of the race leaders right now, and is very battered and bruised Porsche 911 GT3R. I was mentioning, because we saw Alistair Pollock with his Tag Heuer hat, Tag Heuer have brought out a chronograph watch called the Tag Heuer Carrera chronograph. It is a stunning timepiece, absolutely gorgeous. It'll only set you back €7,000. Down to the inside of turns 10A and 10B, Dino Lombardi to the front. Anders Meyer didn't really fight that one at all. I think Meyer could see the writing on the wall there and thought, right, let me get some fuel saving done now.
That was a textbook move from Lombardi, heading down into that turn 10 chicane. It didn't look like Meyer fighted it at all, and I wonder why Anders Meyer decided not to fight that and really force the issue with the defense heading down into turn 10. It looked like just a textbook move. There you can see it heading down on the inside through into the turn 10 chicane. Lombardi, it wasn't even a super deep lunge heading into the braking zone. He just pulled alongside, broke a little bit later, and got that move done. So I wonder what Anders Meyer may be cooking up in the 20 car. Is he eyeballing a pit stop here in the not too far off future? Maybe the next 10-15-ish minutes, potentially. Could that be the reason why he didn't force the issue too much in terms of that defense? Or is he just seeing that Lombardi has a fast race car?
Alistair Pollock has reached 22 instant points. Not only is his car carrying a lot of damage, he's also reached the incident point limit here, which, to be fair, is a bit easier to pick up instant points here than, say, at the Circuit de la Sarthe at Le Mans. And, yeah, and it's meant that he's hit the 22 limit, and he's having to serve a drive-through penalty. Stephen Koenig has had issues out there, the South African, through turn 1. Oh, manages to find the concrete wall, but not too hard. Adam Hedgecock, turn number 5. Well, it's a story told so well that it has happened multiple times. Get out the wall, it looks like, though.
Yeah, potentially that, or the other slightly dim lighting heading down into turn number 6 hid the damage on that race car. But either way, if he avoided the barrier, credit where credit's due to Hedgecock, and if he did scrape the barrier, would not be the first moment he's had in this race. But that, again, every single time we see a moment hang off through turn number 5, I get my own like flashbacks to driving around there. I remember one time doing race control with some GT4 cars, and for some reason the outside tires, but both on the other right-hand side coming out of there, would pick up air instead of the inside. I'm not really sure what it is. The curb on the outside of turn 5, they would probably be better off replacing that curb with a brick wall. It does the same effect.
Here's Alex Davidson's view. Now, he'll be hoping to get himself involved in this race league party and hoping that he is able to get himself back towards the front of the field, because he lost that lead at the pit stop cycle and he is now looking to gain that back through strategy and through any means necessary, that is for sure. But Davidson, he needs to get ahead to try and make any dint into Dino Lombardi's championship holding right now in Pro. Remember, Dino Lombardi came into this week with a 77-point lead coming into this week. So it's definitely Lombardi who has a stranglehold of this race in terms of this championship. But Davidson did get pole position, so he got 2 points in his championship. So that will have helped him here.
I'm just going to briefly break away from the discussion about the racing and say something that I was going to say in reference to the discussion about the Tag Heuer watch. There are people who may be eyeballing that. Meanwhile, I have a truck that's meant to look like a stub.
Oh,
actually, I'm going to hold off on that point as Anders Meyer making the call to pits.
So 33 minutes and 50 seconds, Anders Meyer comes onto pit road. Now, is that the Mustang being thirsty? Now, remember, he was about a second less than Dino Lombardi in the pit stops first time around. Is he going to take tyres this time? The answer is yes, he is. I think that you'll see all these drivers taking tyres in this pit stop as well. But Ron, the strategy is starting. We've got the strategy play working.
The strategy is slowly but surely rearing its head in this race. That strategy cauldron is really starting to bubble in this race. I'm not really sure what I just said there, but Anders Meyer off the jacks, out and away, 25.8 seconds stopped in this pit stall. And let's see, 47.8 down pit lane in its entirety. How is this going to work out for Meyer? I don't think he has the same good grace in terms of traffic that he found the first round of the stops. Dealing with some traffic heading through the S's right now. Looks like he's going to dispense of them rather cleanly, but that's not going to help out Meyer's cause too much.
Alistair Pollock has just crashed at turn number 5. I saw it come up as a yellow flag on my track map. Also, Adam States has a black flag as Alex Davidson comes onto pit road now. So Davidson, the next one, taking his pit stop at this stage. So the strategy is really starting to come through. Eric Reseth, remember, Eric was the longest in terms of the amount of laps in that first cycle, that first pit cycle. He's onto pit road along with Jack Sedgwick.
The pit stops continuing here. Davidson stopped in that pit stall right at the front end of pit lane up on the jacks. You can see Sedgwick, some other drivers down pit lane rolling in the fast lane. Davidson off the jacks right now. I will raise this about this round of pit stops as Davidson out and away driving through that pace car. He's going to exit out in P11 at the present moment. We're seeing a complete swap-aroo from what we saw during the first series of pit stops. These drivers coming in all broken up.
But crucially, he's managed to clear Anders Meyer by a ton of time there. So he's able to get ahead of Anders Meyer in terms of road position out there on track. So there's David Mendonca. We've barely mentioned him throughout this race. He's still leading the Pro-Am category in that Solpac Precision Racing car. He's in 8th overall as the pit stop cycle starts. And still at the moment, in fact, we have had your race leader in AM come onto pit road as well, Simon Andre Livingston. So that means temporarily Aidan Carter leads AM.
That's going to be a familiar position for Carter, but again, still have 30 minutes of this race left to go, and pit stops still continuing. Aiden Young and David Baker coming down the pits at the present moment. Young currently class in P5, Baker in 6th. How's it going to shake out with these two racers as they trundle their way down pit lane? And Hodatas has already come into the pits, I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken. He finds himself in P5 at the present moment. Actually, has he come in during this pit cycle yet? I don't think he has, no.
Just one stop.
Gotcha. Okay, so I saw those numbers. That was from the first cycle of the pit stops, but still staying out there for this second stint. But A bit different than what we saw during the first pit cycle, where it seemed like more of a flood. This is just an ever so slightly sped up trickle.
I could tell you, race leader Dino Lombardi heading onto pit road. So the Grid and Go driver, sponsored by Virtual Coach, is on to pit road now to get his pit stop done here. This is the important one between him and Alex Davidson. So Davidson, his pit stop time was 22, just over 22 seconds in the stall. What's this going to be for Lombardi? Stops on the exact mark, goes up on the jacks to get some race fuel. That's Sunoco virtual fuel, and then get himself off of the jacks in just a few moments' time. Davidson, he is coming through. Now, where is he going to come through in all of this? Well, there goes Lombardi, 24.2 seconds. That's a bit of a longer stop than Davidson did. And there is Alex Davidson coming to the outside. Past him on the outside, or is he? They're not connect. There's contact between the two of them. Your two championship leaders in pro have come together. And Anders Meyer comes through. He's going to take the lead in all of this.
Oh, and I think that was a close call with Davidson and Alessio Benino, who arrived at the scene of that accident as those drivers were still trying to clear each other. It's been a building of tension and a building of those two drivers contending for this championship here in this season. But Davidson and Lombardi coming to blows, heading off into turn at number 3. Obviously nothing intentional, just close racing towards the end of this final endurance race of this season. But the two championship rivals coming to blows in dramatic fashion.
Oh my goodness, this is absolutely sensational to watch. Benino's getting some internet problems happening right now, so he's blinking in and out of existence. Right, here's a replay. It's Alex Davidson. It's Lombardi to turn number 3. Now, does Davidson squeeze Lombardi? Does Lombardi drift out into him? Remember, Davidson on warmer tyres. Lombardi, cold tyres. He's changed his tyres at the pit stop.
Oh, you can see that close call with Alessio Benino. I think there may have been a slight nudge and a tap between those two, that being Benino and Davidson. Either way, though, it's just very close stuff coming out of the pits. I'd like to take a look at another replay of that to form a full-on opinion. But either way, regardless of whose fault it may be, what caused the incident, the outcome is still the same. Anders Meyer finds himself in the net race lead with a rather big cushion back to Alessio Benino, who in all that drama, we haven't really talked about him too much in reference to the battle for the win and podium spots, finds himself in won't be a net P2. He's not going to be complaining about that one bit.
And class act from Dino Lombardi as well. Held back, waited for Davidson to get going again before he got going. So fair credit to Dino in all of that as well. He went and held back. Here we go. Here's the overhead view. I knew it was going to be close, but this is absolutely sensational. And do you know what? I think Davidson maybe could have given an inch or two a little bit more on the inside. You're both going to be compromised going through that turn 3, that tight corner that's over a brow, as Davidson now has made the move on Benino, and Lombardi is trying to follow him through here.
Yeah, funny how the world works. Despite that incident, all three of these drivers still vacuum sealed together, and upon that second look, I would say it's definitely a racing incident regardless between those two. Kind of both drivers share a little bit of responsibility and all that. Lombardi maybe should have backed off. Davidson maybe should have had a slightly less abrupt turn in, but you see that as well. Turn 3 around here, if you're not on the racing line, you're going to be rather screwed. You're going to take a quick trip through the grass if you're on a little bit wide off the apex there. So I could see both sides of the argument for that incident. Just unfortunate nevertheless for those two, and music to the ears for Meyer, who's now extended that gap at the net front of this field, currently running in P5 down to P8 with those 4 racers, to about 3.3 seconds for Meyer in front of Davidson.
Meyer is slowly working his way past lap traffic as Lombardi finally gets ahead of Benino. Now Lombardi, he held back, he waited for Davidson and then carried on to redress the place. But I can see as black flag for Ben Altria, the latest one to fall foul of the instant limit around this venue. I can see that Lombardi and Davidson, we could have one heck of a fight for the final 25 minutes of this race. This is going, you do not want to go anywhere, folks.
It is going to be a barn burner of a finish here to this final endurance race of the season. Road Atlanta simply has not disappointed. Ever since the drop of the green flag, we've had to worry about on-track drama and pit strategy chicanery. It's going to be a fun one right to the line. 24.5 minutes on the clock, and we enter those final 24.5 minutes with Meyer in the race lead, but a heads-up fight for those final few podium spots involving some rather heavy hitters in the championship. Davidson and Lombardi had that moment. Lombardi currently in the championship lead. Davidson really his strongest contender in terms of fighting for that Pro Class Championship lead. It's going to be a lot of stuff at stake for these battles.
Malajov owes us a pit stop yet. He's still out there on track. And right now remember, he took the longest pit stop in that first phase of the race. He's the last driver who owes us a pit stop here, is Malajov, who's currently leading. Now, these two, Lombardi, Davidson, are they going to trip over each other again? Or are we going to see some really good, hard-charging racing from the two of them? And Bonino, well, he's possibly got the best seat in all of sim racing right now, watching these two Pro Championship leaders duke it out around Georgia.
I like that phrase, duking it out at the moment, because these drivers have been giving us some good battles to talk about all throughout this race. Even though it's an hour 45 minutes, I don't feel like we've had any opportunity to breathe and just sit back and relax. These drivers have been keeping us commentators and our producer Ramiro on our toes all throughout this race, which we don't mind one bit at all. Joff making that call to come into the pits in the 918 car. That's going to give the race lead back to Anders Meyer, and now we can really start shifting our attention to the end of this race.
Here we go. Lombardi to the inside. Oh, that was very close going into the braking zone. Davidson loses the place. Lombardi ahead of Davidson, but Davidson's got the better run out of the chicane as they plunge downhill into turn 12 to end yet another lap in this race. Start of lap 63 for these two. Malajov is just coming off of pit road as well, and Joff is going to be actually ahead of these two. So Malajov, we've barely talked about him all race, apart from the fact of noticing that he was catching up to that lead 5 group in the first pit stop cycle. Well, all of this drama that's happened between these two has allowed Joff to jump them all.
Yeah, we didn't really think that he was going to find himself in a spot like this, but hey, he's there at the moment. That is going to be a fantastic series of events for Marley Joff. If he can hold on here, that would be real good. And hey, if he can reel in Anders Meyer, that would be even better still. The drivers are right behind us now. Battle for third. We were thinking it was going to be a battle for P2 and P3, but no, it's only one spot on the podium, and it's going to either come to Dino Lombardi, Alexander Davidson, or Bonino. We have to talk about Alessio Bonino in that number 33 car, because that team, they're looking to try and get as much ground as they can in that Pro Teams Championship fight, and currently with Bonino occupying the final spot in the top 5, it would be an all-right point stay for him.
Yeah, it would be. Absolutely be okay for them indeed. This has absolutely been a sensational race. Right, well, the pit stop cycle has been done. Let's quickly run you through things as things stand at the moment. In the race lead, it's Anders Meyer, 1.3 seconds ahead of Marley Joff, who's second place, being able to jump a number of cars, and he's gained 4 places in this race, up into second place. Then Dino Lombardi, the last driver on the podium, in third, ahead of his championship protagonist Alexander Davidson in fourth. Alessio Bonino right with them there in 5th place. In the top of your Pro-Am, it is going to be Alessandro Toccio, still in the lead of that one ahead of David Mendonca, but only just. Those two have pretty much been inseparable all the way through this race, and those two are going to be still out there. There you see Toccio, not that far behind him is Mendonca, so keep an eye on that. That's going to be for that second place, first and second place in Pro-Am. And Kevin Simpson, it must be worth saying as well, has been able to jump Adam Watson in Pro-Am into a podium spot for Pro-Am. In your AM category, well, Aidan Carter, he's taken the lead in that one. He's been dominating the AM Championship so far this season, and he finds himself up at the front of the field now in AM. Just though, not that far ahead of Simon Andre Livingston, right behind that Mustang behind him in second place. So that's a change of place at the lead of AM. And then the third placed AM is going to be Jack London in 28th overall. So that's how things stand at the moment. And do you know what, here on the battle for the lead, Anders Meyer has not got things his own way.
No, it's looking very good for Marley Joff to try and get a chance, at the very least get a chance to battle with Anders Meyer. It's now a half a second between those two cars heading down that back straightaway. I was just going to raise, though, in the AM category that Aidan Carter seems to be inevitable. This will be his 7th win of the season if he can hold on to that spot. Hopefully I didn't just hit him with the saddest commentator's jinx in my entire time doing broadcasting. But that battle at the front, it is tense. We weren't really expecting this from Marley Joff by that 918 car. He timed that strategy to perfection, and now he may have a good shot to win this thing.
Well, you know, just remember that Effect Simulations, they're one of those teams that we see now regularly in the top split of iRacing special events. They're also involved in a few other series as well. So it's not a surprise to see some of those drivers coming through and fighting in the World GT Championship here. But Anders Meyer, you touched on it earlier. He's not yet won a race overall in this season, has Anders. And he's been pretty much up there, getting faster and faster, closer and closer to that lead. But Marley Joff could be the one that denies him that opportunity.
Yeah, I was just going to raise that as I pass it off to you. If it's going to happen to anybody to have just an absolute shock, upset first win of the season, disrupting your plans, it's going to be Anders Meyer, because he has been so fast thus far this season, but there's been so many circumstances in which he hasn't been able to get the job done, most of which haven't really been in his control. It's either just been down to strategy or just sheer dumb, unfortunate bad luck going the way of Meyer. But as it stands currently, it's a 10.5 between these two drivers, and they got some lap traffic a little bit farther up the road. Can see a Mustang right in front of the other Mustang of Meyer. You can hear the Sharks, you can hear the Jaws theme playing right now. The Sharks are circling around Meyer.
Well, let's not forget that car that's in front of Anders Meyer is Simon Andre Livingston, and that is a Racing Lab Esports car. So, do you think that Simon's going to get in the way of Anders Meyer? No, not at all.
I'll tell you what, considering the liveries on those two cars are completely different, I completely forgot that they were teammates, but yes, they were. That's a great point that you raised there, Paul. He's catching him at a good time, too, on the back straightaway. That is the right spot, but because of the fact that the Mustang is in front of another Mustang, which is in front of that Corvette of Joff, he's got a monstrous run heading down this back straightaway.
This back straightaway currently screaming in red, white and blue as the three American cars go into turns 10A and 10B, but Anders Meyer staying ahead for the time being. Well, we thought we were going to have a pretty close race between Dino Lombardi and Alex Davidson for the overall race win. It turns out that we're actually going to have a really close race between Anders Meyer and Marley Joff for the race win overall. With 16 minutes remaining, there is absolutely nothing separating the Mustang and the Corvette at the front of the field. This is absolutely sensational racing for the World GT Championship. It just keeps on getting better and better.
And hey, to all of you tuning into this broadcast here on RaceSpotTV tonight, that's a good reason to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can never miss out on the action here in the World GT Championship. Still got a lot of races left to go and a lot of storylines from the entirety of this season to tie some bows around. But for this race, we have 15.5 minutes to tie the bows around the storyline to come out of the final endurance race of this season. What started off as an hour and 45-minute long race in the early morning here at Road Atlanta, it is turned into a mid-afternoon barn burner. Meyer and Joff covered by nothing. They're side by side into turn 10, and Joff gonna get that move done.
Nicely done from Marley Joff. Now, is that Anders Meyer playing his cards and thinking, I can afford to let him by now because I know that I've got the pace? Or is it just the fact that Marley Joff has had an incredible pace throughout this race? His average lap times since he's been out the pit stop, average, has been a 1:18.003. Compare that to Anders Meyer of a 1:18.341. Meyer has been slower than Joff. Has also been slower than Lombardi, it must be said as well. Dino Lombardi's catching up to these two as well.
You know, I was gonna try and not mention this, but I feel like considering you pass the ball off to me, I will swing at this. I gotta say, if we see a collision between Joff and Meyer, keyword being if, that would send this race into absolute pandemonium. Dino Lombardi would get involved in that, and considering that there would be an inevitable stack up, you would probably see Alexander Davidson and Alessio Benino get involved in that battle as well. For all we know, one or two incidents can result in this battle for the race win going from a 2-car battle to a 5-car battle. And when that happens, holy cow, we are going to have a barn burner on our hands.
Quite a few fans of Marley Joff in the audience today. Cameron DeBastos and Jack London get together. Well, it is Cameron that is the one that's worse off through all of that. As we go back to our live pictures. Now, there's Dino Lombardi. Last time by, he was an 18.204. Anders Meyer, 18.288. Marley Joff, 17.890. An incredible pace from that Corvette at the front.
Yeah, that Corvette really starting to stretch its legs in the final breaths of this final endurance race of this season. Marley Joff, this would be the upset of the season, I have a feeling. And even though we have a lot of races left to go, we could see something usurp that. But I have a feeling that in terms of the where did he come from sort of result, Marley Joff may be able to grab that acclaim at the end of all of this. He is quick at the front of the field, and that gap is continuing to grow between himself and Anders Meyer. I'm starting to think now, it's still about a second and a half that Meyer has to Dino Lombardi. But a small little mistake for Meyer, let's say coming out of turn number 5, that gap can disappear with the snap of a finger. So Anders Meyer starting to lose touch with the race leader of Joff. He's not going to have to start to worry about Lombardi, I think, if things go wrong.
Well, this one ain't over yet, and it's not going to be over for another 12 minutes of this race. Now, Anders Meyer's caught up to another Mustang, the Atomic Esports car of, I believe it's Josh Booth, and that's just going to allow Dino Lombardi. There you can see in the picture there that Meyer was stuck behind the driver in 22nd of Josh Booth. I don't think he was too pleased by it, but to be honest, there was very little that Boot can do all about that. Dino Lombardi can sniff a second place coming here from this one. It's just ticked over a second now as that race lead.
Dino Lombardi, who won that first and only endurance race that we've had thus far this season at Sebring, finds himself in a spot to not win it here today, but still finish on the podium as a 1.4 second gap between himself and Alexander Davidson, and may try and force this issue a little bit with Meyer. Gus are worrying about that traffic as well. It's been a persistent thing that these drivers have had to deal with ever since the drop of the green flag some 1.5 hours ago. It's going to continue to be that case all the way to the very very end. And if there's a bad lap traffic encounter for any of the drivers in the top three who are now just about evenly separated with the same gap of Joff and Meyer, Meyer and Lombardi as well. So we may see this race get turned on its head again with another lap traffic encounter. I wouldn't place money on it at the moment, considering how those drivers are spread out, but hey, anything can happen between now and the checkered flag. This series is pretty darn good proof of that.
We started this race with 43 cars. We're down to 35 running, so it's been quite a brutal race in terms of retirements, as two compatriots of David Baker and Michael Evdoka running together out there on track, 11th and 12th places respectively. There's been a couple of drivers falling down the field that started near the front. Michael Evdoka, he's been going backwards from the start of the race, and Geraldo Ciutotas as well is another one who's not had a good run here today. I think it's safe to say that those two, I think, will be glad to see the checkered flag when they do.
I feel like it wouldn't be too wrong of me to say that Road Atlanta, despite being the track that these drivers probably have the most experience at, it's one that pushes these drivers out of their comfort zone the easiest. I've seen in some previous broadcasts that I've done, it's usually the tracks that the drivers are the most comfortable on where the mistakes come out the easiest, because you get a bit too confident in your ability to run around this track without further incident. Once you get comfortable around certain racetracks, a racetrack will make sure you don't do that again by promptly putting you on your butt. And in terms of racetracks that have that vibe to it, I feel like Road Atlanta is definitely one of them. This track, really rewarding to get right, really easy to settle into a groove, but if you start to disrespect the track's going to start disrespecting you.
Just half a second is covering second and third places right now. Meyer's not able to keep up to the pace of Malajov in the lead here, so I think that Mustang just losing that little bit of pace towards the end of this stint, and that's what we're seeing right now on screen. But yeah, you see the race leader just in front of the team heaped together, an ominous gaming car. So it's one and then it's Yaman Pruis between the first place and second place drivers. Malijov, though, new to the championship, came in partway through the season, and certainly I think it's just taken a little while to find his feet here, but now really showing what he can do in a more sort of traditional format of racing that he'll be used to.
He found his footing, and now he's going to try and run away with it. That's always so important in a series like this. I feel like it can even ring true for us as broadcasters as well, Paul. I mean, obviously, I've kind of mentioned this every now and then. This is my first season covering the World GT Championship, and you've been here for far longer than I feel like this is a championship where both for a broadcaster and a driver, important to get your footing. Once you know how things come along, you can get into that groove a little bit more. You can get into that right vibe. Happens to be the same case for commentating and driving in a very odd way, albeit I think in terms of talent, I think these drivers have a bit more talent as drivers than I do as a commentator.
I'm just doing a little bit of a little bit of searching just whilst we're looking at this one. I do believe it was season 7 that we started covering this championship on the World GT Championship on RaceSpotTV. No, season 8. It was season 8 that we first covered this series on RaceSpotTV. So yeah, it's one that we have covered for quite a while now, and it is one that has been absolutely set, and it keeps on coming. I mean, I raced in this championship. I'm an AM Teams champion of season 5 when we used GTE cars in this series. So yes, you can say I'm a bit experienced of this series, and certainly it's just one that keeps on giving us some tremendous racing on Monday nights.
I'll tell you what, I can't even judge in that regard as well, Paul. Here on RaceSpotTV, we cover the Friday 2100 GMT Top Split Radical Esports Cup races on iRacing. Those are official broadcasts, and that series was the first ever broadcast I did all the way back in the spring of 2023. First ever show, got on that, had no cameras, had no idea what I was doing, and I've done a broadcast of one of those races every single season since. So that's now 10 seasons in a row that I've been doing some of those Radical Friday shows that you can catch here on RaceSpotTV. But here in the World GT Championship, I mentioned this a lot. This series always continues to impress me with the talent out there on the circuit and also just the brilliant product out there on the racetrack. Some of these drivers I have a bit more experience covering than others. Anders Meyer was part of a GT3 series that I was covering in my somewhat early days of broadcasting back in the summer of 2023, and I got to know him as a very quick driver in the BMW. Now switching over to that Mustang, still very quick. Dino Lombardi, I think, saw a little bit of him in the PRL towards some of my time covering that back in season 1 of 2025, and Aiden Young, have experience covering him in the PRL where he was rather quick. I've experience covering him in the Radical Americas Championship here on RaceSpot. Getting the chance to cover some drivers who I haven't really had a chance to really cover, though, and just noting the absolutely fantastic talent pool here on the World GT Championship. Put on good racing, and they also race each other clean.
Certainly do. And by the way, yes, he might have done 10 seasons of the Radicals, but you get 4 seasons in a year with official iRacing races. This World GT Championship, just 2 seasons per year that you get from this series. So yeah, I've been around, shall we say, in this one, and I'm feeling every part of my 41 years now. Well, we've got 4 minutes remaining. 1.5 seconds covers first and second place Malijov and Anders Meyer, but Meyer is under intense pressure from that man right behind him in that grid and go car, and that is Dino Lombardi. This fight for the podium is still not over.
Yeah, it is still very much on between those racers. They're not going to give up until that checkered flag is up in the air. Meyer, his pace has kind of dropped down like a rock as of recent. He was at one point side by side with Marley Joff, and at one point leading over Joff, but clearly a swapperoo has taken place. Anders Meyer, very fast, but I don't think today is going to be that day for him to grab the win this season. He may even have a trouble time remaining in P2. Lombardi, that 78 car, he's been quick, already has 7 wins thus far this season. So as much as he doesn't necessarily need to go for every single spot he can, considering he has 7 wins in the first 13 races of this championship, I don't think he's going to be I mean, he's a racer. He's still going to go for it.
We should be 3 laps to go then when they crossed that line just a few moments ago, so it's still tight there. Pro-Am is still led by Alessandro Toccio in 15th place overall, ahead of David Mendonca, who is in 16th. That's first and second in Pro-Am. Third place is Kevin Simpson. Remember, Mendonca and Simpson started on the same row of the grid alongside each other, but they've dropped down behind Toccio through this race. Aidan Carter leading, and he's got a comfortable lead now over Simon Andre Livingston, who's in second place in AM. That's 22nd and 23rd overall in this race. And the next AM is all the way down to Jack London in 29th place. So those two are actually getting some good points over Jack London in this one. There is Jack in his E-Datum car. But time is running low for these drivers at the front of the field. Joff's got a 1.5 second lead. Alex Davidson, however, has only got a 0.2 of a second lead over Alessio Bonino.
It's starting to close up right at the end of this race. These two battling for the final spots in the top 5. Gonna give us a good one right to the line. That fight between Meyer and Lombardi still gonna be close as well, about 3.5 tenths of a second between those two racers as it stands presently. Less than a minute and a half left to go on the clock at the end of this 1 hour and 45-minute long race. Getting disrupted a little bit with some traffic heading off through turn number 5. Of all the corners to catch up on traffic, that's probably the single worst by far.
And that traffic has closed up the lead battle as well, because Joff now is only 7/10 of a second ahead of Anders Meyer. Meyer can sniff something. The problem for Meyer is now they'll be going to be starting the last lap of the race, and there is no more traffic ahead of Marley Joff. So Marley can just keep focused forward and getting those lap times in.
This just, the entire complexion of the end of this race just got turned on its head. I mentioned earlier on, hey, one bad run-in with lap traffic can completely change how this race is going to shake at Marley Joff. Still going to find that white flag with a 7/10 of a second lead in front of Anders Meyer, but hey, one mistake and that could be a 3-car fight to the end.
So here we are then, race to the checker. And the last lap of this absolutely sensational endurance round of the World GT Championship. It's been an absolute pleasure to bring you this one. It has been fantastic to watch and talk about this one. That battle for 4th you see on the bottom of your screen, still intense between Bonino and Davidson. They've just come up behind that lap traffic and cleared that finally between those two. But Marley Joff, top of your screen there, first place onto the back straight. He's got a big enough lead that he's not going to be caught. The thing is, who's going to finish in second place? Because Meyer has got Lombardi right there with him, and Lombardi's got a slipstream. What will be helping Meyer is that he's got a slipstream from the race leader as well. Down 2 turns, 10A and 10B. They're going to stay as they are. Needs a good run at the chicane, which they all get. And Marley Joff, new to the World GT Championship, he takes a race win in round 14 of the World GT Championship Season 12. Anders Meyer and Dino Lombardi finish off your podium. Alex Davidson is dropping down the order. Something's happened between him and Alessio Bonino on this last lap. Has Davidson run out of fuel potentially? We'll have to look back at that one in a few moments' time. Pro-Am, Alessandro Toccio is going to come across as a race winner, and he will be delighted to take a Pro-Am win in this one. 15th place overall for Toccio. There he is coming downhill, and we'll see the checkered flag. What a win for the Italian driver. The lead, this is the replay of what happened to Davidson. Oh, and it's contact between him and Bonino. Bonino doesn't think twice about it, gets on the loud pedal and pulls through. Meanwhile, in your AM, Aiden Carter wins the race for AM. He was lapped in that race, and he takes the race win in AM. Does Aiden Carter. Wow, Ron, what a race. And let's not forget, James Boumet up 33 places as well into 9th. In fact, I'll get to you in a second, Ron, because first, we've got the unofficial race results after 80 laps of racing here in the World GT Championship. It's the Effect Simulations driver, Marley Joff, with his first win here. He takes the honours ahead of Anders Meyer by 6/10 of a second. Dino Lombardi was right there with Anders to finish on the podium in 3rd. Alessio Bonino, a little bit controversial towards the end there with that contact with him and Davidson. He finishes 4th for the time being. We'll see what the stewards say about that. Eric Rousseff and Alex Cohen ahead of Alex Davidson. Jack Sedgwick in 8th, and then James Boumet, as I say, biggest mover, 33 places, up into 9th, ahead of Aidan Young in 10th. 11th place then for David Baker, ahead of Michael Evdoka, Geraldo Ciutotis and Lorenzo Castellani. Then it's the bunch of Pro-Ams, and it's the leading Pro-Am, Alessandro Toccio for 07 Racing and Sim Race Lab, who wins that one ahead of David Mendonca and his teammate Kevin Simpson, 2nd and 3rd in class, 16th and 17th overall. Pro-Am Championship leader Adam Watson finishes in 18th, ahead of Adam State and Richard Simner. Then in 21st, Jack Osborne for Atomic Esports. Before we then get the best AM, Aidan Carter for Ernid Racing, 1 lap down on the overall race leader. That doesn't matter. He's the winner here in AM, ahead of Simon Andre Livingston, 2nd place in AM, 22nd, 23rd respectively. Will Guthrie ahead of Phil Samways, Josh Boot and Tim Perry, with Jack London 3rd place in AM, 28th overall, finishing ahead of Taylor Lane and Cameron de Bastos. It's Ben Altria, Ben Gregory ahead of Jan-Man Pruis. Adam Hedgecock and Stephen Koenig were the last drivers to finish the race, and then the rest did not finish. Paul Webster, Alistair Pollock, Arthur Thurtle, Jonathan Walker, Adam Tompkins, and then it's Lewis Ward, Jesse Payne-Wilkins and Dan Blackwell who finishes the one off. And we have got an interview, Ron. Anders Meyer's waiting for us, so let's take a word. Oh, I would take a word from him if I could actually grab him, which we can't do, unfortunately. We'll try and fix this one. But Ron, what a drive and what a race that was.
That was absolutely fantastic. I'm going to go out and say it. Maybe one of the best races we've had thus far this year. That was absolutely brilliant from start to finish. That race had just about everything from the strategy content that made a huge difference towards the end, that heart-pumping racing action, some occasional incidents here and there that kept us on our toes and gave our vocal cords a nice little exercise. That race just had about everything that you could expect out of a motor race. Absolutely brilliant.
It was absolutely sensational. We are having technical issues, which is unfortunately stopping us from grabbing the drivers that we want to have a word to here. So we are trying to sort that one out for you. What a word, though, it is for James Boumé. 33 places gained. I bet he'll be spitting feathers that he started right at the back of the field, won't he?
Well, I've never heard that saying spitting feathers before, but I like it, so I'm going to agree with you. That was an absolutely sensational drive from Boumé, cutting his way through the field like a hot knife through butter. Absolutely fantastic stuff from him. And in terms of the winners that we had in this race as well, they put on some absolutely marvelous drives. I mean, looking through the classes that we have, obviously, first-time winner from this season for Marley Joff and Alessandro Torchio. Aiden Carter continuing that streak of race wins in the AM category, now up to 7. But overall, some absolutely sensational performances here.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. I will give mention as well. Alessandro Torchio up 2 places, but it was 2 important places ahead of Mendonca and Simpson, the 2 teammates, getting that Pro-Am win. Good job from Torchio to get that win.
Yeah, that was a very nice drive from him as well, and shows you that in that Pro-Am category, you don't need to swing for the fence every single time, but if you can just make up those small little gains, it can make a huge difference for you in terms of the greater context. Not really sure if Torchio is going to be one of those drivers we talk about in terms of that Pro-Am championship fight. However, he's going to grab a win, and at the end of the day, a win is bragging rights, and champagne is still going to taste good regardless of where it comes from.
And then just final touch as well. Simon Andre Livingston led the AM category for so long, but Aidan Carter, that final pit stop strategy working out for him and able to take yet another AM win here today.
Yeah, Aiden Carter, we thought he was going to be down for the count. Well, we say down for the count, we were like, man, it's an alien position for him to find himself in. He's running second of the AM drivers, but at the end of the day, made his way back up to the front. That's now 7 wins in a row for him. He got 2 back-to-back at Monza 1 week ago and is now the winningest driver in terms of win streaks thus far this season. He equals the wins that Dino Lombardi has in the pro class. Absolutely sensational stuff as of recent for Aiden Carter.
Right, well, I'm afraid that is all that we've got time for here today, and what a drive it was. What a sensational race, and it'll go down in the annals here of drives for us. But we won't have long to wait for the next race, because in 1 week's time we head to Watkins Glen, upstate New York, for the rounds 15 and 16 of the World GT Championship. But that is all that we've got time for. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. and we'll see you next week for another round of the World GT Championship. From everybody here, Paul Smith, Romero on production, and Ron Mounds, it's a good night from us.